Ken Ham of Answers in Genesis thought it was funny when my wife and I said that people are animals, and more specifically apes, and we showed him how to confirm for himself that this really is how humanity is currently and correctly categorized. But that's just according to science, and what do all these expert specialists really know about it anyway? I gave a speech in Canada recently where I talked about how religion reverses everything, and we're seeing a demonstration of this on Ham's Facebook account. I can't turn to show it because I'll lose the mic, but okay. I've selected a few comments to share here. Down to the bottom left, we have one that says, "They claim to be evolved. They claim others are apes. Racism. Does anyone not see this?" This is how out of touch his audience is. The one I think just above that is, "Evolution teaches those who believe in it to hate all those who disagree." No. Evolution never taught anyone to hate anything. Teaching hatred is religion's job. That's why Ken Ham posted this image on Answers in Genesis, wherein he associates evolution, or belief in evolution, with everything evil. Let's see, he's teaching creationists to hate everyone who don't believe as they do. They teach that anyone who doesn't believe in creationism is a radical feminist, commie, Nazi, racist, drug-abusing, pornographic pervert. And now, communism is traditionally atheist, and religion is typically misogynist, but apart from those two, creationists actually make up the majority of all those other categories. Or most of them. There's one or two that don't belong there at all. They have abortion listed as a direct consequence of accepting evolution too. Never mind that students of private religious schools where evolution is not taught are statistically more likely to get abortions than their peers in public schools. They have euthanasia in here too, and I can't pin that on them because euthanasia is when life is ended out of mercy, often with consent or even at the request of the person in question. And when has religion ever played that game? That's why euthanasia is the only form of killing that the Bible doesn't endorse. And creationists use a different dictionary than we do. When they talk about evolution, they mean all the sciences which contest young earth creationism, and of course that's all science. And this artist apparently doesn't know what uniformitarianism means. I suspect he got that confused with methodological naturalism, because they want to create the illusion that anyone who accepts natural science will also hold to humanism and anti-theism at the same time as New Age religions and paganism, as if those were different things. And none of these are related to evolution, and a couple are redundant, and you can't hold all of them at the same time. They also intentionally ignore the fact that many Christians accept evolution also. And remember, creationists don't actually worship a god, they worship a book, because it is the book that must be infallible, not the deity. And notice also that they do not promote belief in creation on the grounds that it is actually true. I think even they know that it's not, that it's a matter of make-believe. They have to pretend that it is true. In his criticism of my wife, Ken Ham explained it thus: "It is sad that many children today are taught that they are just animals, as this atheist believes. If they are just animals and the Bible's account of creation is not true, then there is no basis for moral absolutes." See, according to Ken, whether you believe it matters more than whether it is true. And I think even Ham knows that on some level the Bible is not true, neither in whole nor in part. And it's a good thing, too, since there's nothing in the Bible that qualifies as morality. If you use the Bible as a moral guide, you will be arrested in every nation in the civilized world. All you need for moral absolutes is a universally accepted definition of morality, and atheists have that. A particular action or choice is moral or right if it somehow promotes happiness, well-being, or health, or if it somehow minimizes unnecessary harm or suffering, or both. A particular action or choice is immoral or wrong if it somehow diminishes happiness, well-being, or health, or if it somehow causes unnecessary harm or suffering, or both. And of course, I got these from Scott Clifton. He does a wonderful treatise on morality. You should look it up on the internet. And of course, all this just proves my point that the God of the Bible is absolutely immoral. And going back to Ham's Facebook, we get another bit of brilliance. One of the posters here says, "Apes don't even have the same DNA. LOL. This stuff cracks me up. If humans are related, then how did the ape DNA change itself? What a lost world. Thank you, Lord, for your Son's love for us and your redemption through him." What meaningless, unintelligible dribble. Looking at this comparison of chromosomes, it seems that we do have the same DNA. And in fact, there's more difference between gorillas and chimps than there is between chimpanzees and humans. Looking over the entire genome, we match up pretty well, but especially at the point where the chimpanzee chromosomes fused their 2 into our 1. There we have an impressive match on both sides. But there is no evidence good enough for those desperate to deny reality, who prefer to live in a world of pure imagination. Another of Ham's followers commented on his Facebook page, "So terrible, isn't it? Please pray for these lost souls. How could anyone be so silly as to group an organism according to its taxonomic traits and then apply the same standard to those in the image of God?" Apart from my recognition of this guy's special pleading and assumed conclusions, my first response would be to note that man created God in his own image, and even the Bible says in Ecclesiastes 3:18-21, that men are but animals, and that all else, all this image of God nonsense, is but the product of human vanity. Another of Ham's followers admits that crowding of teeth is to blame, though he doesn't understand why crowding happens. He says it's a diet thing, not an ape thing. And someone else commented that our classification system was developed by fallible humans. Apparently, this person wants science to seem flawed, arbitrary, and uncertain. Well, to be fair, that the Bible, like all other supposedly holy scriptures, was conceived and composed, compiled, edited, and adapted, revised, and reinterpreted by mere fallible men, and there is no indication that any higher intelligence or benevolent being had anything at all to do with any part of that composition. That's just the fact of the matter, and if you believe otherwise, you're just fooling yourself. The first of these classification systems was devised by a very fallible human. In fact, it was the work of a creationist. It was based on a suite of diagnostic traits, only some of which were arbitrary, and still he was quite frustrated at the fact that he could not distinguish humans from apes, nor apes from humans either. He thought we were all the same kind. Another arbitrary element was added when other creationists insisted on creating 2 sister sets to represent what should have been one taxonomic family. It was the only way that they could create the illusion that man was distinct from the other apes. That bogus taxon lasted nearly 300 years, but finally, very recently in fact, collapsed under the new system, cladistic phylogenetics. It's not the uncertain method that Linnaean taxonomy was. This is more of an objective analysis of molecular data that could be fed into a computer and turn out either confirmation or correction of evolutionary ancestry, effectively like running a genetic paternity test. It was this unbiased clinical comparison of DNA which confirmed that the old taxonomic rates were wrong, and now we can be absolutely certain that we really do belong to the same phylogenetic clade as the other apes and all that that implies. Ken Ham said he couldn't believe that we, my wife and I, would regurgitate what he calls a ridiculous, outdated, and false idea that wisdom teeth are evidence of evolution. Although there are many peer-reviewed mainstream biology papers disproving every part of Ham's criticism, let me cite just a couple from the last few years. This first one, submitted in 2011, talks about the gracialization and diminution of the chewing muscles in human evolution and an increased density of the mandibular bone in modern humans, apparently in response to the low magnitude yet high frequency demands of articulate speech. This one from 2006 says, and I quote, A reduced number of molars may be advantageous from a human evolutionary perspective because of the dramatic lifestyle and diet shift experienced since the discovery of fire and the development of cooking utensils. Third molars, which would have been essential for the survival of earlier hominids, became not only functionless, but also an important cause of morbidity in modern humans. Dental arches have reduced over hominid evolution. As a result, third molars became frequently impacted or malpositioned, preventing the teeth from attaining a functional position. Furthermore, because of the difficulty of cleaning them and keeping them free of disease, impacted or malpositioned third molars led to a higher susceptibility of periodontal disease, such as infections, carious lesions, cysts, tumors, and the destruction of adjacent teeth and bone. These problems led some authors to raise the probability of a complete elimination of these teeth in humans, and studies for intentionally stopping third molar growth for possible clinical application are being carried out. End quote. What this study shows is that the formation of the third molar or wisdom tooth is controlled by a Hox gene called PAX9, which is widely conserved among primates and some other mammals. In fact, ours is almost exactly identical to that of gorillas. The study notes that a particular heterozygous transversion mutation of the PAX9 homeobox gene substituting alanine for proline will result in the agenesis of the third human molar, meaning that wisdom teeth will simply never develop, and this is why not everyone has them. What's interesting about this beneficial mutation is its pattern of occurrence. We humans would like to prompt this mutation across humanity so that no one has to risk deleterious morbidity if their jaw isn't quite big enough for all those teeth. That's the way any omnipotent, benevolent, intelligent designer would do it. But evolution doesn't have a goal in mind. It uses blind mechanisms of random mutations emerging amid naturally selective patterns imposed by population mechanics. What you get from that are variable probabilities of this mutation occurring according to however favorable genetic propensities are across a wide range of given genes. And this is what we see. To determine whether this gene is polymorphic in humans, they sequenced 86 individuals sampled from Asian, European, and Native American populations, and this was the range that they found. This indicates an evolutionary pattern with no indication of intelligent design. This next article reads as follows. Powerful masticatory muscles are found in most primates, including chimpanzees and gorillas, and were part of a prominent adaptation of Australopithecus and Paranthropus, extinct genera of the family Hominidae. In contrast, masticatory muscles are also considerably smaller in both modern and fossil members of Homo. The evolving hominid masticatory, this is a hard word to say several times, masticatory muscles are considerably smaller in both modern and fossil members of Homo. The evolving hominid apparatus, traceable to a late Miocene chimpanzee-like morphology, shifted toward a pattern of gracilization nearly simultaneously with accelerated encephalization in early Homo. In other words, they're saying that as our ancestors' chewing muscles got smaller, their brains got larger at the same time, and they show a correlation here. To continue, here we show that the gene encoding for predominant myosin heavy chain, MYH, expressed in these muscles was inactivated by a frame-shifting mutation after the lineages leading to humans and chimpanzees diverged. Loss of this protein isoform is associated with marked size reductions in individual muscle fibers and entire masticatory muscles using the coding sequence of the myosin rod domains as a molecular clock. We estimate that this mutation appeared approximately 2.4 million years ago, predating the appearance of modern human body size and emigration of the Homo from Africa. This represents the first proteomic or proteomic distinction between humans and chimpanzees that can be correlated with a traceable anatomic imprint in the fossil record. End quote. Now, what's all that mean? Never mind. There isn't time to explain all that. Suffice it to say that if we have a gene called MYH16, which is common to all primates, monkeys, gorillas, lemurs, and so on, we have it too. And there's no reason why we should if we were created in the image of God. Like everything else in biology, this too only makes sense in light of evolution. We have in our genome a primate pseudogene. It's broken. It's dysfunctional molecular vestige of our evolutionary ancestry. It's there. It makes a protein, but the protein doesn't work. When this primate gene is disabled, as it is in humans, what happens is that much of the massive muscles that would have given gorillas tremendous bite pressure only allow us the barest fraction of that. An associated symptom of that is that we no longer have these huge jaw muscles, then we wouldn't develop a sagittal crest to anchor them to either. And the cranial pressure there apparently prevented the brains of other simians from enlarging the way our brains have. So one of the reasons that we are so smart is that we have so many useless monkey genes that don't work. How's that for being created in the image of God? This final slide did not come from a peer-reviewed journal. It came from a biology course lecture given at the University of Madison, Wisconsin this year, 2013. So, Mr. Ham, regarding the current scientific consensus, wisdom teeth definitely are vestigial evidence of evolution, and that is neither ridiculous, outdated, nor false. In his video mocking us, Ken Ham included what he called an answer to that. And I checked it out, expecting to find some twisted distortion of actual research, quote mined and spun, and misrepresented by the Institute for Creation Research or something like that, since that's the best creationists can ever throw at me. Ham's answer, however, wasn't what I expected. I must say that it is rare to have such low expectations and still be disappointed. He says, the comment about wisdom teeth once again illustrates the ignorance of atheists concerning the origins issue. Losing something is the opposite of molecules to man evolution, which requires new information being added to the genome to produce a characteristic not previously possible. First of all, Ken, regarding our alleged ignorance on the origins issue, you cannot claim to have done something again if you've never done it before. And I would venture to guess that I have probably forgotten more about this subject than you will ever know. For example, I at least have the ability to define what evolution is and how it works. And all of the university-level science courses on this topic show that I am right. And all of them illustrate your ignorance on this issue again and again. Secondly, while geneticists have positively identified new de novo genetic information emerging in the human genome, evolution also includes beneficial mutations resulting from the loss of information too. And I explained this in my video on the phylogeny challenge, which I posted over 2 years ago, and yet we still have no answers in Genesis. While studying the human-specific loss of regulatory DNA and human-specific traits, scientists were able to isolate 510 deletions from the ancestral primate genome, which also caused significant regulatory changes. One of these was the loss of tumor suppressor genes, resulting in the expansion of specific regions of the human brain, and which also left us more susceptible to brain cancer. Finally, unlike Mr. Ham, I can accurately describe what a vestige is. And just to be clear about that, let me first show you an example that was intelligently designed. Look at these two motorcycles. Notice that the one on the right has 2 gas caps. That's the classic style. And the one on the left has only 1. Evolution is better understood in terms of economics than as continuously advancing progress, and the market tends to exert selective pressures of its own. For example, the market generally favors symmetry and versatility, but not redundancy. So while it used to be that you could fill up your bike from either side, newer bikes can only fill up on the right. But these are both newer bikes. Most folks would rather have the classic look even if one of the gas tanks doesn't open. And on some recent Harleys, the left cap is just a dummy. It doesn't do anything. On this particular one, it's been given a new function. It's a fuel gauge. But whether the left cap has a function or not, It no longer has the original function. It's still a left cap, but it's only a remnant of what it used to be, and that's what makes it vestigial. Now for some zoological examples, we'll start with a really obvious one, so familiar that you might never have noticed it. Anybody know why dogs have dew claws? The obvious evolutionary answer is that they used to have 5 fully functioning toes that all met the ground. This again has no explanation from the creationist world. This is not a divine design. There's another adaptation in here that a lot of people overlook when they look at the dew claw. Just above the word dew claw, you'll see that there's a heel pad. That is where the dog's actual heel is. Why would the dog's heel be located on a place that never touches the ground? And why would he have a claw on a toe that doesn't have any musculature to move it? These are remnants of when they used to be flat-footed, when they were plantigrade rather than digigrade. Once upon a time, the ancestors of both dogs and bears walked on their whole foot, and they looked remarkably like these guys. This is a wolverine. This is a kind of living fossil because once upon a time the fossil record was full of animals that bore this kind of shape in various sizes, including several that were identified as bear dogs, kind of indistinguishable between bears and dogs. And then if you want to go back into the vestiges about where their toes came from and why they are designed the way they are, once upon a time canids, bears, wolverines, weasels, and so on actually had prehensile hands. Very early carnivores still have them. Raccoons are a good example. And myoecids, these are the ancestors of both dogs and cats. And then moving on a little bit further, you have a vestige, a remnant of what something used to be, like when the whalers would peel off the flippers and discover the bones underneath. There's a problem here. This is not the optimum design for a flipper, for a whale, when you're using the same bones and the same configuration that you would use in a human's hand or in the wings of a bat and so on. But it gets even weirder than that. Let's see, we have hands on a whale. We also have fingernails on the flippers of manatees. And again, that's not the only vestigial trait because you will also notice an elbow. And I forgot to include the slide on here, but we actually have the complete evolutionary transition for manatees, including one that has fully functioning feet, all 4 of them, and can still walk around on land. The entire lineage is now known from the fossil record. In another example, we have a partial evolutionary step from snakes. The reason that modern pythons sometimes maintain their claws toward the back by the cloaca as they are the remaining remnants of the hind legs. This is a Cretaceous snake, so they were already well on the way out. It doesn't have any legs on the front, but this and several other fossils have been found where the hind legs remain, and they remain in such a diminutive state, they're absolutely useless. And as I said, a vestigial limb does not have to be absolutely useless. It only has to be a remnant of what it was, and clearly that's what this is. There is no function that can perform. Sometimes the vestige that you have comes from something that has a completely different use, even if the use you have for it now is better than what you used to have it for. Notice how penguins use their wings for swimming, and they're so elegant at it, when once upon a time they used them for flying. They had another use before that. This is a fossil of an oviraptor. Originally, the oviraptor means egg thief because they were always found associated with eggs because they're nesting animals. And they were thought that they were lizard-like things. Why would they sit on a nest? They're cold-blooded, so they must be stealing these eggs. However, when they found this fossil, and they found it sitting on its eggs like a chicken, with its arms draped over the eggs, they realized there's a problem here. First of all, clearly it's warm-blooded. There's no other reason to do this. But having just a naked arm over these eggs would afford no benefit unless you have a half wing. Now, Ken Ham likes to argue that there's no such thing as a half wing and there's no evolutionary advantage for having one, but there is, and he's demonstrating it right there. The original wings that dinosaurs first developed and that birds later inherited were originally used for this purpose. Now look at the evolutionary advantage of being able to care for a larger clutch. When you're looking at simple population mechanics, this is a greater advantage than flight. And it also showed us that while we have no feathers on oviraptors, we know clearly that they had them. And that oviraptors and velociraptors actually look more like this, which kind of ruins Jurassic Park for some of you. But now, well, while we don't know, or while we don't have the traces of feathers on oviraptors identified yet, we do have them on velociraptors. This is a comparison of the wings of turkey vultures and the bones that were found on the velociraptors, and they show the same telltale signs. We have the beginnings of what will become flight feathers anchored into the bones of these animals. These were feathered dinosaurs. Now, we actually have other dinosaur fossils for which we have the feathers fossil imprinted with them, but we don't usually get things as dramatic as this to show what their lifestyle was actually like. And then moving on again, what remnant does this lead to in modern animals? There's two types of birds alive now where there used to be, I think, 5. They are the paleognathes and the neognathes. The neognathes are the ones you're all familiar with. The paleognathes are the ostriches and emus and cassowaries and so on. This is my emu, and that's my son embracing our emu. We loved that bird. And I discovered something curious about it. He doesn't have a wing. He has a naked arm. And on the end of that arm, he has one finger. On the end of that finger, he has a claw. Why? There's no purpose in having it. He has no musculature to move that arm. It is utterly useless. The only way that those arms move is when his ribs expand and retract in breathing. That's it. That's a vestigial limb. That's a vestige from being a dinosaur. And that's what that animal still is. Now, going back to Ham's website, because he knows about all this, and it's not about the data that he doesn't know. And it's not like if you were to show him the data that he would ever honestly change his mind. He's already dismissed all these things. A lot of the people on his Facebook give the impression that, hey, didn't we dismiss that or ignore that already last week? Why are they bringing that up again? Somebody posted here, says, I realize the area of theology on this site is creation, which I don't dispute. However, it seems illogical to accept, maybe even embrace this hatred, but I do. We are finally being hated because of Christ rather than because of us. Do you see the sheep are being separated from the goats? Romans 1:18-32 is going on right before our eyes. So stay strong in the faith, my friends. Ah, yes, the faith. The assumed conclusion, adopted without reason and defended against all reason. This is where Answers in Genesis advertises, announces, admits, as if it were something to be proud of, that they believe what they do for no reason, and that they will continue to defend that belief against all evidence to the contrary. And Answers in Genesis is not the only one making this admission. All creationist organizations post a similar statement of faith. Honesty is irrelevant. The truth literally does not matter. Whether you believe it matters more than whether it is true. It is a game of make-believe. Now, back to Ham. One of the other people on his board says, and I think it's up here, while listening to this video, my 9-year-old says, this girl refuses to listen to reason or wisdom, but instead hears folly as it cries from the rooftops. Imagine a 9-year-old saying this. God has not allowed her to hear the voice of wisdom, huh, Daddy? The idea that God doesn't allow people to hear wisdom seems to be a consistent theme from Genesis 2 all the way through Scripture and for religious practices beyond that. Just as there is no morality in the Bible, there isn't much wisdom there either. Nothing that is both internally and externally consistent anyway, but I'll save that for another talk. The next commenter, and this one is the one I found most disturbing. I should mention this previous one where they said Romans 1:18 through 32. That, if you read that, that's a complete reversal about what's going on. Nobody's hating these people. We're not separating sheep from goats. What that literally means, or what that passage talks about, is how we know there's a God, but we all want to be homosexuals, so we pretend that he doesn't exist. That's really what it's saying. That's how backward and insane that passage is. To say nothing of the fact that it's completely wrong, like the rest of the Bible is. Now, this person, even my 3-year-old son knows the truth, he says. Andrew, did we come from monkeys? Andrew, no eat banana. The explanation is that he has watched A for Adam video a lot. And then the guy says, that's right. Is the earth millions of years old? And the tiny toddler says, no. Then hands me the Dinosaurs Genesis and Gospel DVDs. Me, Andrew, do you want to watch these? Andrew says, yeah, points to dinosaur on cover, says, be mean, meaning behemoth. And this post is closed with the phrase, so proud. And that's the one that bothers me the most. This person is proud of how they've trained their child to parrot approved responses thoughtlessly and without understanding. This child does not know the truth because the parent does not know the truth, because they've turned to a source where truth cannot be found. This, too, is a topic for another time. Conditioning impressionable minds to be easily deceived by and too readily believing impossible claims of incredulous people on insufficient evidence is not an accomplishment to be proud of, but that's how Answers in Genesis perpetuates. Ken Ham's followers criticize us for being concerned about how other people choose to deceive their children. Apparently, it is within a parent's rights to teach their kids that science is a satanic lie, that other races are inferior, that alien reptiles really run our government, or that Benjamin Franklin is the first king of America. You have a right to lie to your kids. I've actually seen people post that they have a right to be wrong. And Ken Ham says that parents have a right to homeschool their children with religious nonsense all they want. In his hypocrisy, however, he complains that there are also secular homeschoolers and that they prefer to teach their children factual information. Of course, he doesn't phrase it that way. Factual information with practical application. Ken Ham thinks that's a shame. Indoctrination is not education. The two practices have opposite goals. And that's why I challenged Ken Ham to debate me on the merits of homeschooling factual accuracy versus the erroneous assertions of religious faith. Think of it as a moral issue. If it isn't factual, it isn't correct. Thank you.